Welcome to Retail Retold, the stories behind how that store landed in your neighborhood. I'm Chris Ressa, in conversation with the people and stories shaping retail and real estate. Brought to you by DLC.
Counts you in too.
Yeah. Welcome to Retail Retold, everyone. Today I'm joined by Mark Cassell. Mark is a partner at LevRose Commercial Real Estate. I'm excited for him to be here. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. Definitely excited to hop on and have some chat.
Excellent. Mark, why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so obviously partner over at LevRose, primarily working in the industrial space here in Arizona. Our office is in Old Town Scottsdale. We just had our 30-year anniversary last year. And we're about 30 or so brokers, 5 or 6 support staff as well. But really what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis is working on industrial sales, whether it's investment sales or owner user. I did start out actually in retail, oddly enough, when I when I graduated college in 2015, got my license, was an intern at Sperry Van Ness. Went to LevRose right after I graduated, and then worked on a retail team doing leasing, learning a little bit more about investment sales. Really liked the underwriting side of investment sales and diving into the numbers, the leases, and really all those details. It was really fascinating. About 3-4 years ago, started looking at industrial in Phoenix, and really liked the growth and that sector as well. The owners I felt were a little bit different. I'm sure you know this as well, where you're noticing this there's a different personality trait that's associated with each asset class. Like retail, I feel like is more high fashion. I mean, you go to ICSC, and that really seems to be the case for industrial. It's obviously extremely blue collar with the groups that you're dealing with, whether they're manufacturers, logistics. That's really a lot of the groups and individuals that we're working with on a day-to-day basis, especially here in Arizona, which is honestly awesome. But yeah.
So let's start there. And this is one of the reasons that I thought was interesting is it doesn't matter what side of commercial real estate you're on, whether you're a broker, whether you're a landlord, a tenant. I think few people move from asset class to asset class. There are, I think the asset management world does this a lot from the institutional asset managers or the money managers that invest in real estate. They do. But the ones that are touching and feeling real estate, whether it's like an operator of the property, i.e. a landlord, a broker, or a tenant, they pretty much stay in their lane of asset classes. And you really moved asset classes. So talk to us a little bit about why you made a transition, because I love retail, but you moved to industrial and you, let's start there.
Yeah. It really started, there was a broker that brought me in on a listing that was an investment sale, multi-tenant industrial building down here in Chandler, one of the suburbs of Phoenix. And it was right by this airport, Chandler Municipal Airport. I'm like, okay, what is this? Like, yeah, I'll help you out. I know how to underwrite buildings, no problem. And, we worked it out on that sense. That was my first, contact of, I guess, dipping my toes into industrial. It was interesting because one of the tenants in the building, it's a flight school, ended up getting my pilot's license through them. And it's a really good, relationship and rapport with our sellers, really good friends, and really just kind of had this same repeat business, talking to the neighbors, and then kind of grew out from there, from Chandler to Mesa, Gilbert. I don't know if you know the geography of Phoenix.
I do, yeah.
They're all, neighboring cities, and, getting to know that same culture throughout just prospecting, seeing if these groups would want to acquire this building. Um, it wasn't just kind of a blue moon scenario, if you will, but it was a lot more repeat, kind of vibing with my personality. I think a little bit more so as well.
So when you said vibing with your personality, take me a little deeper there. How does industrial vibe with your personality more than retail?
I love well, it was from the first experience like I had with this building down in Chandler. You've got the airplanes flying above you. It's just the noise around it. It's kind of the, getting down to business sense of it. I love walking through manufacturing facilities, whether it's like a tile manufacturing building and there's just dust everywhere. Just seeing that nitty gritty of like how things are made. I don't know if you ever remember, it's like a show on the Discovery Channel, maybe like 10, 15 years ago called like How It's Made.
Sure.
For watching that, it was the same thing. I'm having kind of this nostalgia, walking through these buildings, seeing everything is, really being made for the backbone of a lot of industries, especially here in Arizona.
Excellent. I think when I think about it, I think you mentioned a point that was interesting, which is, you know, the dust, the noise.
Yep.
I think one of the things in industrial that's a little bit different is the physical plant, I think, is much more of a the physical plant is of higher level importance, it feels, than the dirt. Now, to both sides, retail, the dirt's important. Retail, the physical plant's important. The industrial, the physical plant's important. So is the dirt and the location. But in retail, sometimes it's like, I want this specific end cap. I don't want to be one space over. And, they go in with a little bit more like, the physical plant today doesn't matter because we'll make it what we want to make it. And in industrial, like, well, the ceiling heights or number of bay doors not there, we'll move on to the next site. Whereas that's in retail, like, okay, those things matter, right? Like the frontage or the dock. But in retail, there's a lot like, we'll change the configuration to make that work because the location and the actual dirt underneath is a lot of times of higher level importance than necessarily, the placement of the door. And in manufacturing or something like that, the whole, it doesn't matter if that ceiling height is not the right ceiling height because we can't get the number of shelves, we can't get the forklifts in, and then it's over.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
like
super practical in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, like you'll you hear an industrial, like, I got this great building, and in retail, like, a great building usually is like the actual real estate and the other co-tenancy. It's rarely like, there are some uses where ceiling heights matter in retail, but it's rarely like, oh my God, the ceiling heights and the number of bay doors.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking at the demographics, you're looking at the traffic counts.
Yeah, exactly.
You're saying with the co-tenancy, it's like, who's going to help them be as successful as possible? Which it's super interesting with retail. I think with industrial, just struck a chord with me more so. I'm like, this is really cool. It's a sector that I never really like walked through, got to know, and just ended up loving it. Which is kind of weird to say about brick and mortar real estate, but neither here nor there.
Yeah. Was it hard after establishing relationships and credibility in the retail space? Like, did you feel like you were starting over as you were going into industrial?
100%. And I still had, a lot of carryover, and I still have a few carryover deals and relationships with retail. The interesting thing is a lot of investors, especially here in Phoenix, that had a pretty good retail presence, and I'm talking about more on the private capital side, were looking to chase industrial deals. So it was kind of the perfect
Sure.
timing, seeing the growth of that market. And I really, I cared more about working on things that I really enjoyed doing, more so than just chasing the growth of industrial, which obviously it's been explosive in Phoenix, but you know that's just it being a benefactor of it as well.
Got it. And what are some other like key differences that
Yeah,
somebody who's in retail, which is a lot of the people that listen to this,
yeah,
might not consider on the industrial side? What's like a key difference of working in industrial versus retail?
yeah. The first thing right off the bat was swapping all the annual lease rates to monthly lease rates, which was, I mean, it wasn't like a huge learning curve. It was just like what I'm used to. I'm trying to think. A lot of industrial leases here in Phoenix have been switching over from industrial gross to triple net. So that was a lot easier on the transition. On the underwriting side of things, trying to think really just how useful the building is to what you were saying earlier.
Yeah,
What can
that's
you
really
do with
key.
it? What can you do with this? There was there's obviously a pretty big carryover with, proximity to freeways. If you do have a good amount of employees, what are your nearby amenities? So it's not a ton on the demographic side with that comparison, but I think access to highways and having that infrastructure set up is really key.
Yeah. Uh, The you mentioned the monthly lease rates, and when you say that, the denomination you're talking about is dollars per square foot.
Yeah, so it'll be if it's $12 a foot, it'll be a buck a foot. So
Yeah. The
which is super
in retail,
California.
I was just gonna say in retail, it's like that in California,
Yeah.
and I'll never forget we had a deal out there that we owned, and someone sent me, you know, an LOI at $2 a foot. I was ready to call the guy and go, "What an insult! Are you serious?
Yeah.
Is this a serious?"
Yeah.
But turns out that was monthly lease rate. So that is super interesting. The I have seen a lot of like OMs that I've seen, even nationally, the conversion of industrial from industrial gross to like triple net.
Correct.
I'm curious, are you seeing any fixed cam?
Hmm. It's situational. I think it depends on the age of the building and really what's the ownership group and what's their profile. The thing is, the biggest expense, I mean, I'm sure it's the same thing with you guys, is going to be property taxes. So, I mean, but with common area maintenance, it's not as management intensive as a retail building.
Got it. Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
You don't have consumers.
yeah,
Uh, for sure. The other thing I would say that happens, and you touched on this in the very beginning, a key
yeah,
difference to me is there are a lot of owner users in industrial, and not that there's not in retail, but it feels like much more in industrial. There's owner users than there are in retail. And what I mean by that, everybody, is people who they own they're the tenant. They're not a tenant. They're buying the building, not as necessarily a real estate investment, but as their business investment, and they own the building and they're using the building. They're not leasing it out.
yeah. No, that's spot on. And it's interesting, that transition. Uh, it's weird because it's their business's home essentially, and it's funny. Like sometimes if you've got a business that's been there for 20 years, it's still a successful business, and you've seen the appreciation of the real estate. Sometimes that real estate's going to be worth more than the business. I feel like it's more rare that the business is worth more than the real estate, unless you've got 100,000 square foot plus facilities. But for the 50,000 and under, that seems to be more so the case, where the real estate's going to be worth more than the business.
Interesting. It depends on the business, but yeah,
Correct.
right. Depends on the business,
Yeah.
but sure.
Just my observation.
Understood. Uh, so let's talk about, so, I think Phoenix, Arizona is one of these like hot markets. You've had, migration to the state. And I think, we've heard a lot about like chip manufacturers and
Yeah.
I have a 4-year-old son. He is a boxing coach. So yes, everybody, my 4-year-old son is in boxing, and his boxing coach was in the union in New York and in construction, and calls me one day and he goes, we got to postpone lessons or find you a new coach. I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, did I do something? What did I do? Did I offend you somehow or something? Do you think I'm being too hard on my son? What's going on? He's like, no, in my, we had a huge job come up and I had to take the opportunity, and they're shipping me to Arizona to build a chip manufacturing facility.
Oh, no way. Wow.
And I said, whoa. He's like, I'll be back like once a month on the weekends. And I'm like, I'm trying to do a little bit more than that. But anyway,
Yeah.
I think, that's just, and that's like, that was a personal story for me of what's going on in Arizona. So tell me, what is the industrial market like in Arizona? What are you seeing out there? Because no matter what you hear, we still, I think there's still interesting things going on in Arizona, notwithstanding we have this interest rate world we're living in, and headline news around the dirty word of recession. So give us some color of what's going on in Arizona from industrial real estate perspective.
Yeah. For industrial, just kind of a high level. I'll touch on TSMC in a minute just because it is super fascinating, but that's a cool story too. But with Arizona, vacancy rates are extremely low, definitely much lower than retail is, mainly because there are so many buildings, especially in that small shop space size, where there just isn't enough inventory out there. I want to say, depending on the submarket, it's anywhere from maybe 1 to 5% at the highest. I mean, it's pretty tight for Arizona. Deer Valley, which is not too far from TSMC's facility, is probably the tightest submarket for industrial here in Metro Phoenix. There's not a lot of turnover. Price per square foot has really been skyrocketing from, maybe 150 a few years ago, inching towards $300 a foot, which is pretty insane for industrial. Um,
Yeah.
for the other submarkets, I mean, there's just a lot of growth. If you go towards the Southeast Valley, towards Mesa and the Mesa Gateway Airport, what's interesting about that part of the Southeast Valley with Skybridge is there's a lot of 100,000 square foot plus facilities that are getting developed, and they're mainly logistics based. And obviously, the airport's seeing a ton of growth with additional hangars as well. There's so many airports in Phoenix, mainly because it was a lot of training facilities for World War II, oddly enough, which is something that's interesting as well. But it seems like there's still no slowing down. I think with our sale leasebacks for owner users that want to capitalize on just the high prices, we're starting to see that bridge get gapped a little bit as well, just because of the interest rate environment that you just touched on.
So a couple questions. One, are you seeing new development? How about spec development?
Yes, definitely a good amount of spec development. It's easily the most expensive. Um, there's a lot of development, mainly for the logistics space, from what I'm seeing. Not a ton of yard space, which is, I would say, probably more in demand based on the groups that I'm talking to. Um, where you're seeing those higher price per square foot at like 250 to sometimes even $300 a square foot for these brand new tilt up buildings, which is nuts. I think just to get some of these out of the ground, it's like 180 a foot. But the question is, how are these tenants going to be able to pay it, and what's going to happen in the next 6 to 12 months? I think for those larger projects, it'll be a little bit more interesting to figure that out.
So what are you seeing from,
Yeah.
so when we're talking $250, $300 a foot, you're talking the cost to purchase it. What are you seeing? Like you see the OMs, what's like a lease rate on those buildings?
Yeah, it'll be anywhere from, depending on the sub market, probably I'm gonna go back to annual, so like 12 to maybe $18 a square foot. I remember talking to one of my buddies who developed an Amazon building, and it was unheard of to hear like $14 a square foot triple net for like a 200,000 square foot building. Granted, that was a few years ago, but that just kind of paving the way for the madness that was ahead, if you will.
Got it. And what these investors who were buying in,
Yeah.
what size buildings are they looking for? What's like hot and why?
Yeah. If you're looking for more logistics, you're going to be out towards Mesa Gateway. And that's mainly due to having the access to that airport. It's growing a lot down there, and there's a lot of incentives from the city of Mesa. The west side of town, Glendale, Peoria, along the Loop 303 corridor, is a lot of logistics as well, mainly because it's cheaper to store the goods here and then ship it to California, as opposed to having it in Inland Empire. For your actual like manufacturing, that's going to be like in the older parts of the city, south of Sky Harbor Airport, in Phoenix. And it's interesting with Gilbert, Chandler, and Mesa, there's still a lot of industries that are focused on aerospace. Like Northrop Grumman is a really big presence out here.
Got it. And so is there like, as a broker, is there like a sweet spot size range where like, oh my God, this size range, this is going to fly off the handle?
I would say 5 to 40,000 square feet. It's going
Got
to
it.
be extremely hot.
And we've obviously seen this extreme interest rate movement. Has it
Yeah.
slowed down investor demand?
I would say with interest rates creeping up, the thing that we've got to do on our end as brokers is help bridge that gap with pricing. On some of our deals where we had out there that were a little bit too aggressive, obviously trying to get that nice 1031 exchange buyer who had a few days left on their ID period. And now we're starting to see the rates creep up. We've got to get a little bit more realistic. Now we're finally seeing that gap get bridged where our sellers are, coming to terms with what's going on in the interest rate environment. The demand is still there. There's a lot of activity. I think I was talking with a lender the other day about just how busy we've been up until Christmas, up until New Year's, and even going into this year with just new deals and how to put things together as well.
So if I'm reading the tea leaves, the answer is investor demand is there. It's a pricing exercise, and you feel like Phoenix is turning the corner where sellers are coming around to the new market conditions and what interest rates are doing to pricing.
Correct.
Got it. Mark, what else haven't we talked about that we should be talking about what's going on over there?
Yeah, so we got to talk about TSMC. Obviously, they took your your kid's boxing coach. So, uh, so with TSMC, it's Taiwan Semiconductor. It was an initial like $12 billion investment. It's going to be the biggest building in the state of Arizona, and now they just increased it to like 40 billion. It's going to bring about 12,000 jobs, and I believe that includes, or it actually doesn't include all the additional employees they're going to be servicing, um, TSMC and those businesses that are supporting them too. So
Got it. Yeah. And so where is that?
Yeah, so that's actually going to be in North Phoenix. If you're, say you land at Sky Harbor, you're going to take the I-17, go directly north, probably about 40, 45 minutes, past the Deer Valley Airport, and it's right, well, directly south of like Anthem on the west side of the freeway. If you're, trying to go up north on a ski trip, it's going to be to your left, so you can't really miss it.
And how big is the building?
What is it, 1 million square feet?
Yeah, it's something like that. And they said it's going to take a long time to build this thing, right?
2024 is estimated completion.
Got it. Well, fascinating. Fascinating stuff. I couldn't believe that this is what was going on, but
Yeah.
this is the world. This is how I found out about the chip plant. My son's boxing coach. Well, listen, I want to take us to the last part of the show. I got 3 questions for you. Are you ready?
Yeah, fire away.
All right. Question 1. What extinct retailer do you wish would come back from the dead?
Circuit City.
All right. Question 2. What is the last item over $20 you bought in a store?
Does that include restaurants or no?
I'll let you answer how you want to answer.
Okay, so I went to Kaya for lunch today. That was like 21 and change, whatever it is. It's fancy Chipotle, but yeah.
Last question. If you and I were shopping at Target and I lost you, what aisle would I find you in?
This is too easy. The Lego aisle.
Lego aisle. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
My wife, it would be in the home section, but yeah, if I'm escaping off, I'm looking at that stuff.
Fantastic. Mark, this has been great. Thanks so much for talking to us about your transition from retail to industrial, what's going on in Phoenix. Really appreciate the time. Good luck to you, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Appreciate you watching. Hit subscribe. See you in the next one.